Hi, Matt. What do you have for us today? First of all, let's start with the socks and then we'll get to the topic.
All right. So I actually I introduced, and I have found that it is just so much easier to take the sock off, especially
There
with
you go.
with the virtual background. Um, I introduced these socks about a year ago, and I'm going to share them again, and I'm going to tell you why. So these socks, nope, it says
Oh, yeah, nice. Those are
it says
pretty.
Folsom, California, right?
Yeah.
And it's got a bridge, and then the bottom is kind of boring in my opinion. So this is most people can't see this cool part here. Um,
Yeah.
and it what the woman who gave me these, um, it was a year ago that I she had asked me through some friends. I had never met her. She had asked me to run a 100-mile race with her, and I can't remember if she's late 60s or early 70s. I can't remember how old she is.
Yeah.
But she asked me to pace her for part of the run. So I've never run 100 miles. And so I went and ran miles 60 to 80 with her. And she had a little goodie bag for me, and these socks were in the goodie bag. And I don't even think she knew that I loved cool socks. But why I wore these when I opened my drawer and like started looking through, I wore these because I was like, I'm going to pace her tomorrow night for her second
Oh,
time
wow.
doing it. She's doing it again.
Wow.
And she swore to me afterwards, she's like, I'm never doing this again. And that's what all of us who are into endurance sports usually say is like, I am never going to do this again. Which maybe we should talk about that, but I'm never going to do this again. And then yet here she is doing it again. So I'm excited to run 20 miles with her tomorrow.
I'm really glad. I have done one full marathon and I've done a number of half marathons. And I did the one full and I was like, I'm never doing that again. And thus far I haven't, but I have thought I have another one in me, but I think it's like, as a female, I liken it to childbirth where you go, I'm never doing this again. And then you do. So I don't know. There's something about the amnesia of like you forget. So and I'm gonna turn it to addiction. It's like you go, oh yeah, I got caught. I'm never gonna do that again, and then you do. So
Right.
there's
And
all aspects of what our little minds do. But
our
good for you. Glad for you.
and glad for her. So I'm excited. I'm
Yeah,
hoping
that's amazing.
if she does a goodie bag, which I really don't care whether she does or not, I'm hoping to have a different cool pair of socks to show you guys.
There you go. That is an amazing. I mean, like really, that's an amazing accomplishment. I can't even imagine. I thought that the
Oh,
marathon was like, you know,
yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it's really cool. I don't know that I'll ever do a 100-miler. I've done a lot of them, I've done quite a few marathons, and I did an Ironman and that sort of thing. But okay, so I'm gonna jump into it, and if you don't have anything else, I'm gonna jump into our topic.
go for it, please.
So we had received an email after Scott and I gave the last one because I talked about the Yohari window. I received an email, somebody asking if we would do an episode teasing out the distinction between a facade and a blind spot. And the, so the reality of it is that I can't say that I've gone and done a ton of research on this, but I actually loved the question. And why I love the question is because as I'm working with couples, I see this so commonly that let's say a betrayed partner, it is in my judgment, my anecdotal experience, that a betrayed partner will typically have a much higher emotional awareness, a much higher even cognitive awareness in their life. Recovery, stability tends to be more easier for them to achieve. Doing the principles of recovery tend to be a bit easier, and that's not to minimize their pain and the difficulty at all, but what I find is when I finally start working with a couple and trying to bring them together, a betrayed partner will often, they've written a ton of different stories in their minds to try and explain all these outlandish behaviors that the partner struggling with addiction has done over and over. And they continually ask the question, why, which it makes sense why they're asking why. They just want to understand. And if they can understand, they can have compassion, they can have empathy. And so they are in this constant state of trying to discover. And the truth is, the person struggling with addiction is often like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And so the betrayed partner is left wondering, do you really not know? Are you lying to me? And there's been so many lies that they might even make something up. I've worked with clients who, because a spouse was not, because it's not the spouse's fault. So let me get rid of the because. A spouse was so adamant that a physical affair happened that the partner struggling with addiction was like, okay, I had an affair. If I tell you I have an affair, can this go away? And so they went through recovery under the impression that an affair had actually, a physical affair had happened. I want to get distinction there, that a physical affair had happened. And it's like, sometimes the person struggling with an addiction will lie about disclosure, meaning tell more than they needed to. They'll, and you get into it and try and figure out, why do they do this? So much of it is, it's all emotional management, and they're just trying to survive the moment of pain. And so, for lack of a better way of saying it, they're idiotic in their behavior to try and survive pain in that moment. So they say things that aren't true. They elaborate things that aren't true. Sometimes they say things that they don't mean that you want to hear, because they just want you to calm down so their pain goes away. So if we start to tease that out a little bit and go, what's a facade? A facade is when somebody knows that they have information and they don't want somebody else to know it, right? They're hiding that information and they're figuring out ways to pretend. So let's say they're still acting out, but now they've learned tools of recovery. And so they're using their tools of recovery. They're going to meetings. They're changing their language, right? To give the facade that recovery is actually happening. That's what we call a facade, right? They have information. They're not sharing it. A blind spot is they don't know what you know. They don't know what you see. I can see it as their therapist. You can see it as their spouse. Maybe a buddy in recovery can see this thing in them. And so you ask them about it. Hey, what's this thing? What are you talking about? Well, you keep saying this thing. What does that mean? And they're not aware. It's a blind spot. They don't have the awareness to be able to respond. And what I've learned is, a lot of times they'll say, I don't know, because they literally don't know. And I've had spouses get upset with me because I start teasing it out. Well, could it be this? Could it be that? Could it be this? And spouses are like, you're leading them. And I'm like, yes, I am absolutely leading them, because in my belief, based on as much as I've been able to get from them, they literally don't know. So I'm trying to give them some breadcrumbs to think about it. And as a clinician, just so you're aware, sometimes I'll ask some of those things, and then I'll ask something different, almost contradictory, because I want to find out, are they going to say yes to everything? And if they say yes to everything, then I know we have another blind spot or facade going on here, right? And so as a clinician, I'm trying, and as a betrayed partner, you guys understand when you ask them different questions to try and catch them, right? Less maliciously, maybe. I'm doing the same thing as a clinician, trying to figure out, do they have the ability to tell me their opinion? Do they have the ability to tell me their thoughts? Do they have insight that they're not sharing with me, or that they are sharing with me, so that I can figure out, I really think this person is clueless. I think this person really has a blind spot. I don't think this is a facade. And so the blind spot is they lack the awareness, even if it would appear they have the skill, they lack the knowledge of what's actually going on. They lack the understanding of some of the negative patterns they have happening. They don't have the answers to the why questions that hopefully recovery will help them get. The other thing about it is I've had people a year into recovery, 2 years into recovery, they'll tell me, I really think this is why I did this, or I think this is why I started this particular behavior. And then a whole nother year later, they're like, you know what? I've gained a whole lot more insight. It's changed. And so we have to leave room that their blind spots can continue to change and that they can continue to gain insight and grow and share. So I don't know that I have a whole lot more. I'm happy to try and take some questions here. But I know that as a betrayed partner, it's so much easier to believe that they're giving us a facade and that they're not clueless, right? Because I would argue, I would hope sometimes that you're not that clueless. Are you really this clueless in your life? And I hate to say it, with all the work that I've done with people that have been in addiction, they are that clueless because they don't need the self-awareness when they can numb with addiction or unhealthy behaviors of any sort. People who are clueless are checked out from reality. Well, addiction's a wonderful way to check out from reality. It's not a wonderful way to have relationships because you have to be present to have relationships. And so it's pretty surprising to a betrayed partner to sit in the cluelessness and realize they're out to lunch and they've been out to lunch their whole life. And so this is more likely a blind spot than it is a facade. So Tammy, take it away from here.
Yeah, great information. And yes, the facades, like I know, unfortunately, too many people who do the look, I'm checking off the boxes. I'm giving you that appearance, that facade that I'm doing the right things. People, we've had people come to our treatment program. They were 4 years in picking up chips, sponsoring other people, like giving the lip service to doing things right, still acting out.
Oh, totally.
You know, and it's so hurtful to them, but also to their partners, you know?
Totally. Absolutely. So I'm going to reply to a comment that was in the question and answer. And it's not the first comment. It's going to be the third one. Somebody just commented, said, I'm sorry, Matt, but I hate hearing this. And I'm going to tell you why. Like, tell me why you hate hearing this, because what's coming up for you right now is your fear. And your fear is healthy. Your fear is making you confront potentially your blind spot, right? Because if you hate hearing this, you're confronting something that's going on inside of you, which is either, I'm going to throw out some ideas here. Okay, now I'm leading you. But I want you to consider it's either something like, I hate hearing this because I might need to give a little more compassion and empathy to his blind spots, right? And that means I need to give him a little bit more grace, or maybe be a little bit more patient, or maybe learn how to ask some different questions, or maybe give more time for therapy to work, right? Let's see, there's other reasons. Why might I hate hearing this? I might hate hearing this because I may have been thinking it's a blind spot and it's really him having a facade this whole time, right? It might make me confront that I've been too gracious, that I've been giving too much compassion and empathy. And now I have to consider that maybe there is a bit of a facade, right? And what I'm going to encourage you to do is go and have this conversation with him or her. And say, look, let's talk about it. When have you had a facade in our relationship? What made you change and open up to me about that? When have you had blind spots and you were clueless, and what helped you overcome that blind spot? Go have a conversation about it. And also tell me why you hate hearing it so that I know the truth for you. So
Well,
anyway,
no, I think that's good. And I think all of those are valid. I think it's also the fear of like, if I just understand, I get so many partners are like, why? And I get that they want to know why. And they hate when an addict is going like, I don't know why. I also know lots of people who know why and keep acting out. So even if you think you have a chunk of the why, more will be revealed. I mean, I've had so many layers of, oh, that's another piece of it. Was able to stay in recovery, didn't have to act out, but I've had more, more epiphanies, shall we say, but I also tell partners, your brains think like normal. And I hate to use that word, but I haven't figured out with a better one.
No,
And an addict brain thinks skewed, so like a person who would never betray their partner, who would,
right.
who would never conceive of doing any of those things, can't understand how somebody can do
Oh,
it, compartmentalize
totally.
it, it doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't make any sense.
Oh, totally. It's almost like I've seen betrayed partners. I'll talk about women here for a minute who if their partners had an affair or looked at porn or whatever, one of their first things is, oh, I must not be pretty enough, right? I must not be sexy enough. I must not be sexual enough, whatever all these I must nots are. And it's like, no. You're thinking, as weird as it sounds, you're thinking logically. Unhealthy addictive behavior is not about logic. It has nothing to do with logic. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't actually feel that that's actually very logical, right? But I can see why a woman might think that. I already have insecurities around not being pretty enough, not being sexual enough, not being whatever enough. And so logically, I've got to come up with a reason that answers that. There is no excuse, just so I'm clear, that justifies unhealthy behavior. But we want to come up with logical reasons. But when you start working with addiction, which is at its core a behavior that covers up mental health issues, it's not logical. You can't explain it. You actually have to dig deep to figure out what it is for that person that's led them in that direction. So trying to come up with logical answers or questions to answer, it's terribly difficult, if not impossible. Especially
and
for
an
a betrayed
addict
partner.
And an addict is happy to go, yes, it's because, if you were just sexy enough, if you did what, yes, it's your fault. No, it's not.
I was actually just teaching a client I think I was teaching a client today. I'd have to remember, but
They
where
blur,
I said, yeah, it's all, it can be a blur sometimes, where I said, why are you taking accountability? Right. And it was this idea of, well, I feel bad. And I'm like, be careful. If you're over accountable, the other person will then not allow themselves to be accountable, because they're like, oh, if you've taken accountability, even if they don't do it on purpose, it's like, oh, well, if that's the answer, I guess that's the answer. So I always tell people, don't be over accountable and don't be under accountable. We have to find that sweet spot of accountability.
Well, I think that ties into what you said, and I've heard this too, where people fessed up, owned behaviors that they didn't do, just to appease. But then what happens for the partner? I knew you were lying. I knew what else are you lying about?
Yeah,
so
what else are you lying? It's like,
we have to take accountability and responsibility for our actions. We don't take accountability and responsibility for things we haven't done. We have enough on our plate with what we've done.
Right.
So, okay, let's go back to the first question, which is, what would you recommend saying or behaving like toward my husband who has 4 years post-disclosure, continues to lie, and also discloses slips weeks later? So,
yeah, that's a tough one. I think I would call out the pattern, which is, hey, we've been in recovery for 4 years, or, I mean, you're saying you're post-disclosure 4 years, so I don't know when recovery started, but I would probably
I'd say
suggest,
not if they're slipping all over the place. So,
well, right here, you've been, we've been doing recovery work. That's what you could say, right?
mhm.
We've been working with a therapist. We've been, doing recovery work of sorts, however you want to phrase it. And I'm struggling because one of the things I've learned is that lying will erode the foundation of the relationship. And so in my mind, I'm wondering, what's it going to take for us to get past lying? Do you see that that's something you would ever be able to do? Am I needing to get to a place where I either need to accept that you're going to lie to me or move on? Right? Like, if you notice what I'm doing, I'm not accusing, I'm not um I'm I'm not attacking. I'm just trying to point out, here's what I'm seeing. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts? What's it going to take for us to get past lying? Um, and are you suggesting that I need to just get comfortable with it? Which, between you and me, I'm not sure how well that's going to work out for you. And as far as slips, I think I would say the same thing. Like, hey, one of the things I've learned in recovery work is that healthy recovery is disclosure of slips within 12 hours. And so when you disclose to me slips that are weeks later, it makes me question where we are in our recovery work. And that makes me scared. And I want to be close to you. I want a deep connected relationship with you. I want our relationship to be restored, and maybe not even restored, but better than anything we've ever imagined. And I don't know how to get close if there's lying, especially, disclosing slips weeks later is lying, because they've got 12 hours to check in a slip. And so if you're not checking in slips, then I'm not rebuilding trust with you, and that makes me sad. That would be my approach. You can let me know if you have any other questions on that, or how that feels.
Yeah, well, and it's challenging because I feel for you with like trying to figure out what do I say and how do I behave, because I can only imagine how fatiguing that is and how discouraging that is to have that be the pattern and not seeing any progress. Because in real recovery, it is, there is shifts and changes. You start to see this person, and not perfectly, but you start to see this person moving into the space differently. And I think for those that continue this behavior, supposedly know about recovery, but continue to act out, it's like they're not fully engaged in acting out, but they're not getting the benefit of the recovery work.
Right.
You don't get the freedom that you do if you do the work, so it's kind of like the worst possible place to be, and they're stuck. I kept and I've shared it with some people that have reached out, about stuck, but like there was this little graphic, and it says sometimes you're stuck because you choose to be. I think that's close, but it's a bicycle stuck in like quicksand kind of stuff, and it's like you're so unfortunately some people choose that. And in the 12 steps we talk about, some people are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves.
Yes.
So it's one of those things. And and they say, they're not at fault, they seem to have been born that way. Now there are such unfortunates, but that the majority of people are able to, if they just do the work for being on a recovery path, not just, checking off a box here or two, but do the real work. The freedom that it brings to them and the healing to other relationships is life changing.
There are times where I've seen betrayed partners get to a place where they are doing all that they know how to do, and they're stuck because their partner's stuck. And I've wondered sometimes if the best thing you could do in that moment is actually go to your partner and say, hey, I'm stuck. I'm doing the best I know how to do. I'm not sure what to do differently here. But it would appear that you're stuck. And so at this point, I don't know anything other than to just do a holding pattern. And we're really not going to get better. We're not going to get closer until maybe we explore together some other directions that we should go If you have some ideas for your growth, I'd love to hear it. If you have some ideas for my growth, hit me. Let's talk about it. Right. But I'm at a place where I'm now just waiting. And if you're going to continue these behaviors, then I'm either going to wait or eventually, and this is what I tell my betrayed partners if we're one on one, or even if we're in a couple session, I'll say, eventually, you're either going to have to get comfortable in this spot and be okay with it, or quit, right? And I'm okay with whatever. It's not going to affect my life. But you have to kind of decide, what am I going to do? And so confront them with, rather than confronting them with anger, rather than confronting them with, and I see a lot of betrayed partners who want to take control because you feel so out of control. I don't blame you. But if you come in, well, here's what you need to do, and you need to do this and this, this, and you lay out their recovery for them, they might just do it to appease you. But you may need to confront them and say, look, I've got some ideas of what you could do, but I don't know what you actually need. And so I'm going to wait. And when you decide you want to try something different, I'm here. But our relationship probably isn't going to progress. And that makes me sad.
Well, and I talked about this with, who knows, like you, as a blur with somebody not too long ago, but at some point there's indifference. And when, like, I've moved away enough because there hasn't been safety, there hasn't been a relationship. We're so disconnected that I'm creating this whole other life for myself, that doesn't really include you or much of you. And so, that indifference is, often where the relationship takes a turn and can end. So, but I often share too with partners, is, like, looking at this, because it's easy to get caught up in the day to day. But look at it, like, you've been doing this 4 years. And again, this is just talking, not, any judgment or anything. It's support, so, like, are you okay if 2 years from now, this exact pattern is happening? And if you are, okay, if not, what do you need to do to take care of you, regardless of what the addict does or doesn't do?
Good stuff.
Okay. Next question is, how would you encourage an addict to get curious? My SPA husband doesn't ask questions no matter how many times he hears it. What is that blind spot? I'm curious. Are you asking, he doesn't ask questions about you, about anything, or about
Himself.
his addiction? Yeah, like, I'm curious. So feel free to add that.
Yeah.
What are you looking for him to be curious about?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I was just gonna, overall, there are some people who are just withdrawn and they don't, I mean, getting curious, you say, what is that blind spot? I mean, let's talk about, this is actually gonna go, I'll blend the next question in with this one. The next question is, how is a blind spot different than being in denial? So I will say this, I believe that denial is a behavior to avoid blind spots, right? And if we don't want to see what's underneath the blind spot, we stay in denial as a way of keeping ourselves away from the pain. We're not actually keeping ourselves away from it, but it keeps us distanced from it. It keeps us numb from it. And so you might, the way that I would approach this for the person who asked the first question is, if I were to go to him as his spouse, I would probably say, hey, been listening to the webinar, or I've been thinking about a concept in recovery, however you want to say it. And I'm wondering, it would appear to me that you don't think about what's going on underneath for you, or you don't ask me questions about how I feel, or it doesn't seem like you want to go, in my opinion, very deep emotionally. Can you help me understand why that is? Like, I would say, ask them to get curious about why they don't get curious. and see what happens. It sounds funny, but point out the pattern of them not being curious, and then you could ask them, have you ever noticed that you don't want to get curious? Have you ever noticed that that seems to happen, or that if I get curious, you pull away, right? So
Mhm.
you start asking questions about what it is about curiosity that doesn't appear to be landing for them. So then that's the same thing with denial. Even though that wasn't the question, I'm going to start talking about denial. Hey, I've brought this up several times. You've said no every time, but these other pieces that you're bringing up to me seem like they fit, right? It seems like you don't want to believe that that might be the truth. And then I ask, why wouldn't you want to believe, if this is the truth, why wouldn't you want to believe it? What's the danger in believing it? So what I'm asking them is, what's the danger of coming out of denial? Right? So the difference between a blind spot and denial is that if we can focus on denial as the behavior, we can start to find out why they don't want to go into the blind spots. What are they afraid to discover there?
Mhm. Yeah, I was like, I'm confident there's fear. And she did add overall. So like it's being
So hopefully I
lack of
covered it well
curiosity
enough.
about everything. Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
I
So
covered it well enough in my response, but
yeah, no, I think, yeah. And it is challenging. And I'm like, I was sitting here going like, I wonder what they're like, what are they thinking about? Like, do they think about this stuff and just don't verbalize it? Which is a possibility.
well, the other thing that I'll throw out there, when I've spent so much time, and I love it. I'm fascinated by it. I've spent so much time trying to understand the way people think and why they think the way they think, and it's so curious to me, which makes it good that this is my job, right? But sometimes I have to teach a spouse, and I don't know if it's true, but I would say that overall, pursuing partners tend to think, tend to think, overthink, and ruminate far more than a withdrawing partner. And what
Mhm.
I've found is that a withdrawing partner will often, they're very momentary. I think about it in the
Mhm.
moment, and then once the moment's gone, well, why would we think about that? And the pursuing partner doesn't even understand how that could be possible. How in the world? We had this conversation. I've been thinking about it nonstop for a week. You mean to tell me that you thought about it for the rest of the evening, and then since then you haven't thought about it one bit? And the rest of the evening would be a stretch, right? Like, there are times where a withdrawing partner, this is my judgment, I don't have any data to back this up, but the withdrawing partner, it's like they think differently. And so I'm going to give you some examples. Uh, another observation I've made is that you have people who are engineers, people who are accountants, people who think really literally, right? Oftentimes are the ones who are more withdrawn, less emotional, very matter of fact, and I've had to like kind of teach in this case, let's say a betrayed partner, you might need to accept that this actually is just how their brain functions, that they don't get curious naturally because the way they process information is just really linear, right? Whereas a pursuing partner is like pew, 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 all over the place. And they're
Mhm.
making connections from 20 years ago, right? And so what's it like as a betrayed partner to consider that perhaps my partner, or even a non, even if you're the, even if as, and I've seen it, somebody who's struggling with addiction tends to be the pursuer. But what's it like? But they're also, those are the ones who are not, it's not as difficult for them to get curious, and they're open about a lot of things. And if their spouse is a withdrawer, their spouse is like, why are you telling me all this? I don't want to know any of this, right? Don't even give me a disclosure. Just tell me it's
Mhm.
never going to happen again, right? Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so ultimately, like, we have to accept that that our brains can process differently from another person's, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're in denial or that they're in a blind, a blind spot or a facade or whatever, that they just might think differently. So that was a bit of a tangent. Hopefully it was helpful.
It was good. It makes me laugh because, I've changed my language, but I used to say to my husband, I would say, I've been thinking, and he would go, like, I hear it almost under his breath, uh-oh, and I was like, so I no longer preface with I've been thinking, because, like, there are, like, like this weekend we're cleaning the closet in a massive way, because I was thinking about, like, we could organize this and all this. So, like, this
Oh,
project is not what he would be of his making. This
yeah.
is definitely of mine, but it's going to be great. So,
Oh, it's so funny. I'm the same way. I'm a ruminator. I'll spin things around over and over and over, and I'm making connections. I remember when I first became a therapist, my wife's like, "Why does everything have to mean something?" And I was like, "No, it's incredible. We can piece everything together. It all fits." And it's because in my brain, like, I was constantly curious and thinking and moving everything around. And I swear that uh she's very much more of that engineer creative brain that, like, she's thinking and analyzing, but she's analyzing which oil paints mixed together to make this color, and this, how do I show this type of shadow, and all that fun stuff. Sorry, I hope
mhm.
that all made sense.
No, he's finance. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So and yeah, so it's always interesting how we get paired up, isn't it? So.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, well. Okay, so the next one. I have been sober over 20 months. Yay, from porn
Good
and the
job.
lies and deceit that come with that. My wife continues to push and pull in the relationship. We are currently in the middle of her withdrawing from the relationship, but she is working hard to stay close, as there is still communication and we are still affectionate. I find myself wanting to ask her what she needs to see from me for her to come closer, but I feel like that is putting it on her. She has told me that she's scared, not of me acting out, but that there were so many lies and so many years that she doesn't know what is real. Do you have some thoughts on how I can approach her on this subject about us getting closer? Thank you for sharing that. First of
Oh,
all, I love
it's
that you've got
absolutely,
20 months and that you're looking for how do we navigate this? This is
yeah.
tough stuff.
You know, absolutely beautiful question. I can hear this person's heart, and, like, I'm so excited. I'm going to start potentially in a weird place. And that weird place is when you say, I find myself wanting to ask her what she needs from me. Let's start out with the compassionate side of this. I think that's a beautiful question to want to ask, because it's me saying, I care about you. I want to show up for you. I can see that you're suffering. I don't want you to suffer. How can I ease your suffering? Absolutely beautiful question. Most of us, though, who have been asked that question, it drives us crazy. I don't know what I need. Leave me alone. I don't know what I need. Just figure something out. Do something different, right? Like, so often, if someone's asking us what we need, we don't know, right? And so I'm in a space where I love the question. I love the heart of the question, but I try to stop asking that question. What I try to do instead is, based on what I heard you say, it sounds like you need this. I try to speculate, because it can help them to start to think, do I need that? I'm not sure I need that. Oh, okay. It's not that. Well, then I guess if it's not that, could you be needing this? And if you'd like, I mean, we got to get through them, or maybe you come back to another webinar that we do. You could add in, when this is happening, what might my betrayed wife be needing? And if you give me a scenario, I could help you brainstorm. But if instead of asking what you need, ask her, it sounds like you might be needing more of this from me. Is this correct? But the other thing I'll be careful of, if you're doing really good recovery work, she's probably becoming more aware of what she needs within herself that you can't provide. So it might be, hey, I have been doing these things. You seem to still be struggling with X, Y, and Z. I'm wondering what it would take for you to trust yourself. Um, I wonder what it would take for you to face you being scared and lean into being scared. So you're asking her questions that are causing her to think. Stop taking accountability. I'm going to make a judgment here. Stop taking accountability for her recovery as if you are going to be the need fulfillment service, and that once you do what it is you think you should do or she thinks you should do, that suddenly she's going to heal. She has to confront that much of her healing is going to come from within herself, and that you're going to create a space where she can do that, where she can get messy, where she can be angry, where she can be sad. Too often, those that are struggling with addiction, I have to tell them, look, when you get stable, it'll give her room to break. Has she had the ability to break and be a total mess and you hold stable? Because if you can't give her that space, she doesn't want to be a mess. Because if she breaks and you're unstable, then she's got no stability. So she's like, no, I got to hold this all together and be stable. I don't have room to be a mess until you can show me that I can be a mess. And if that's the case, you might have to say to her, hey, look, babe, I want you to be a mess. You don't have to, you can be scared if you need to be scared. You can not trust me if you don't want to trust me right now. That's fine. You do whatever you need to do. I'm here. We'll figure this out. Show her she she doesn't have to do it right now, and she can be a disaster in the process, because I would imagine that you would agree with me that she gave you room to be a disaster. Now it's her turn. I'm not sure if you have any other questions or your thoughts are on that, but those are my quick thoughts.
Okay, the next one is thanks for the response. I have a really hard time understanding when he tells me he didn't know what he was doing. I can't understand how a person can't know what they're doing when they are acting out. I do understand it in an intellectual capacity. I understand dissociation, but my heart doesn't want to accept that. I feel tremendous shame in my heart that I wasn't enough. I'm probably not gracious enough to accept that he was on autopilot. And then she adds that holding pattern waiting is excruciating for a betrayed
Oh,
partner.
it absolutely is excruciating. And so I don't want to minimize how painful that is. And I do think, uh, I do think that there has to be some grace that autopilot really does guide, right? And so if autopilot's on and we start asking why, the answer is often because I didn't want to feel anything, or I wanted to feel something different, anything other than what I was feeling. And so then you get into this space where um you get into this space where you have to accept that they were like a zombie, and that the why comes down to really why the addiction came to be in the first place. All the little minute whys along the way sometimes aren't answerable, other than because I was in an awful place and I made awful choices, and none of them are your fault. I need to own my own. So I don't know. I love the way that you're thinking and working through all of that, but I think it's good to realize that they may not have had the intellectual capacity. So I love it.
So the next one is, yes, he wants me to accept that he's an addict and lies. He is trying. And I had to pull up. I'm not a Yoda, like I'm not into all of those movies and stuff. But I remember, this is one line I remember: do or do not, there is no try. And I think that is really, I honestly, I hate I'm trying from addicts. Like it just
No,
doesn't
yeah,
work for me. So
no, because if somebody's trying, I would imagine that the process of that is, it's going to look a little different. It's going to be like, hey, I did go to therapy and I talked about my lies. And here's what I'm discovering right now. And I'm going to keep working on trying to figure out what my lies are about. So I can't promise that I'm not going to lie again, but I'm going to try and work on discovering what my lying is about. And so then it's like, we're not expecting perfection. If you're a liar and acting out, right? Then teach me what you're working on around that. And so that, I always hate that I'm trying. And if in the moment I could respond this way, I might say, oh man, I'm so glad to hear that. Can you help me understand some of the things that you've been trying lately? What's been working? What hasn't been working? Right? If you're trying, give me some insight. Right? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, then it's hard for me to know that you're trying, because if you don't know, I don't know that I know. So thanks for telling me you're trying. When you'd like to talk about what trying is, I'd love to. Right? That, I mean, that's me handing it back to them. If you can't have a conversation about what trying looks like, I'm not sure that you can tell me you're trying, but now that's just sounds like another lie.
Well, and I think about Dr. Rob talks all the time. If what you're doing isn't enough, do more. And if it's you're seeing your therapist once a week, you need to see him twice a week. You know, whatever it is, do more. But you started off with like there's this pattern of like there's just this. If you're doing the same thing over and over again, and expecting a different result, that's insanity. So we have to do something that interrupts that cycle. And if what he's doing isn't enough, then he needs to do more and different. So I was at one of my 12-step meetings recently, and somebody talked about they'd gone to 12-step for a long time, and they had basically warmed a seat. I was like, oh, thank you I'm sorry that you relapsed. And now he's got massive issues, negative consequences from his relapse. But I was like, but you didn't do the work. And thank you for being a reminder to me of why it's important to do the work. Because I'm living happy, joyous, and free, not every single moment of my life, but like I live in my
Right.
integrity. And so
Feels a whole lot better than where
if
you
you
were at.
yes, and I I'm not worried about relapsing today. I'm doing what I
Right.
need to do to take care of myself. So to me, it's like that's like I think of the trying as the whiny try. I'm trying. You should give me credit for like, oh, you're a good boy. You're trying. No, show me what your actions are. You were
I'm
kinder in how you were sharing
I'm
it.
laughing at the sarcasm in the way you're sharing that.
Mhm.
And I can appreciate the frustration of a betrayed partner. However, I certainly wouldn't shame anyone who's putting in an honest effort of trying, right? But again, I go back to, and this is, I think, what
4 years of cycling is to me like, I mean, 2
right.
months in, oh, that's different.
No.
4
Oh yeah,
years.
no, I'm highly suspect. If you've been in recovery 4 years and we're still going through the same cycle, I'm like, oh gosh. Honestly, at that point, I'm going, okay, we're gonna send you to Sila. We're gonna send you, like, where do we need to go? What inpatient do you need to check into? Because if we're still doing the same thing, right? This isn't working for me, right? So let's have a conversation. What's our next step? Because I
Well,
can't.
and it's not working for him either. I mean,
Oh,
like
totally.
that's the challenge,
Well,
and that
but
this is
maybe,
what we do at
maybe it
Seeking
is. Maybe
Integrity.
he's like, no, I'm comfortable
Oh,
here.
oh, true. Okay. All
I'm
right.
comfortable here.
True.
I'm sitting in my forgive the analogy, my soiled diaper and in my icky mess, and it's more comfortable than having to show it, having to clean it up. I'm just going to
Mm,
sit here in my mess. And sometimes that's where people are at, and I would have to figure out how much of that, how long as a betrayed partner am I willing to wait?
mhm. Fair point. I forgot the comfortable in being, yeah, in this. Okay. Next question. My husband is in denial. He refuses to do the work as CSAT has given him. X won't join support group. He's seen him for 10 weeks. Last Friday, I read a letter telling him how I feel and what he's done, and it hurt me. But my husband won't answer me if he's willing to do recovery work. A few days later, after I brought it up, now he's telling me he'll discuss it if and when the church counselors say they are ready. I'm like, what? I'm not talking to the church biblical counselor. She's caused me treatment trauma. He's not rebuilding my trust. He's deceiving our church. I see no positive change at home. Indifference, yes. I've moved away emotionally because he already has. Our marriage is so dead. It looks like he doesn't want to do his part. He works and pays the bills. We are no longer friends or roommates. 2 children still in high school, and older children are older. So, there's more. The holding pattern was mentioned, and waiting. How long should someone wait when someone is in denial? When the betrayer is not doing recovery.
Yeah.
So he travels for work and isn't home much, and is just very disconnected.
So I always try, I'll give you 2 pieces of information that I think would answer this. One, I encourage people, do a year of recovery for yourself before you make a decision like divorce. Get yourself in a better place. Do as much work as you can to get yourself in a better place. And after a year, then I tell people, if you've done really good work, consider divorce. If you're not seeing any change in them, consider divorce. But I mean, I will say the research shows that 85% of all people who get divorced are just as unhappy or more unhappy than they were prior to divorce. And so, yeah, it's wild how divorce doesn't solve problems. However, if you've done good recovery work and you've gotten healthier for yourself in the course of a year, what I tell people is you'll be part of the 15% who are happier or at least more at peace if you make the decision of divorce from a place of peace. It feels peaceful. It feels like the right decision instead of a reactionary panic decision. So if you're going, how long should you wait? Well, when you feel at peace about ending the relationship, then you may not need to wait any longer. If it still feels like turmoil, if it still feels like it's something you don't want to do or it doesn't feel right, then don't do it. But that doesn't mean he's ever going to change. I mean, I've had people say, you know what? I'm going to stay in the relationship. At least now I know what to expect and I'll make it work. And I'm like, okay, every person has to decide. You can stay married to an addict for the rest of your life and have a reasonably happy life. You know, people do it. And a lot of people are like, well, I now at least know what I'm up against. So I'll have the best connection I can. And I can deal with this. And other people are like, can't do it. But if you choose not to do it, just make sure you do it from a place of peace. That would be, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, well, and you're right. And if he's traveling a lot, like it's more like roommates. I mean, like there's lots of people that work out the logistics, and for financial or kids or whatever, do that. And then there's lots of people I can see it, like there are and what about a legal separation instead of a divorce?
Well,
I mean, that's consult an attorney on that.
Well, so here's what I love that you just wrote what you wrote next after legal separation instead of divorce. I love what you wrote. You said, I'm hoping a legal separation would be a wake-up call. That makes me nervous because that doesn't sound like you're using a legal separation as a tool for yourself, a healthy tool for yourself. It sounds like you're trying to oh gosh, I'm going to say this and I don't mean any harm. It sounds like you're trying to manipulate an outcome. And that always makes me nervous because when we try to take control, it can make things more painful for us. If you feel like a legal separation would be good and help you be better in recovery, then do it. But figure out what a legal separation is and if it's going to be an effective tool. But don't do it to wake him up. Just get healthy. Get healthy to wake him up. Get healthy in hopes that he gets healthy too. Don't try to force him to get healthy. Just focus on you getting healthy. Don't worry about him. I mean, of course you're going to worry because you love him and you want things to be different, but I would not encourage you to do things in a hope to help him get better. I don't know if Tammy, does that make sense what I'm saying?
No, yeah, I do. I do. Making a decision on what do you need, and if a legal separation is what you need, do the legal separation without any expectations on what he's going to do or not do. And if you do a legal separation or file for divorce, are you willing to go through it, through with it, regardless of what, I mean, you can always obviously stop the process, but I think, like you said, Matt, it's really, what do you need for your safety, for your healthy boundaries,
And before
I would go with that.
And before I went through with a legal separation, like technically, by the way, you got to consult a lawyer. Absolutely. Because I know in some situations, a technical legal separation can be beneficial for one party and not for another. And so just make sure if you do it, it's not putting you in a worse place. So I don't know the ins and outs of it. I just know that there's certain times where a legal separation kind of puts one part can put one party in a better place and another one not, but I just don't know. So that's why I'm not an attorney.
Right.
If you're going to do something legally,
get information. Yeah. I always say, find out what a divorce would like, find out what a legal separation, find out you've got kids. What is child? I mean, all of those things, and it varies state by state. So yeah, you can't even ask your friend in another state what happens, because like, it doesn't matter,
Get a lawyer.
Okay. Two more questions.
Yep.
So addict here, sometimes I feel like I'm overly focused on my why. Is that bad? I.e., if I get in the way of recovery?
Great question here. It depends, right? You're saying overly focused on your why. I would be curious, and we don't have time this webinar, but come back in 2 weeks and let's do it. But I'd be curious on, why do you feel like you're overly focused? What harm is it causing, right? Which goes to your next point, it's bad and gets in the way of the recovery. I have found that sometimes somebody might have an OCD thing going on, where they're obsessing about the why, and they're spending too much time thinking about it, or they're obsessing about confession, and they're trying to come up with every disclosure possible, even if it's not real anymore, because they actually have developed an OCD thing. And so there are times where we truly can be overly focused on something and it's not helpful, but I don't know that I have enough data to understand why in your case it could be good or bad. I would love to hear more from you on, how's it getting in the way of recovery? What could you be doing instead of focusing on the why? Is your partner sick of hearing your whys? Is it causing disconnection in your relationship because your partner's tired of hearing the why? Like, next webinar, come back and tell me more about what your obstacles are there and why, and why.
Well,
sorry, that was funny
like,
for me.
Yeah, no, it was funny, but I think it's one of those where, like, it's a journey, and like you said, like, people go, oh, I know why. And then 6 months later, they're like, well, that wasn't really why. And sometimes it just doesn't matter why. Are you doing the behavior? Have you stopped the problematic behaviors? Are you understanding your triggers? Are you able to maintain your recovery? Then my experience, and it's not just mine, but with other people too, is that as you have more capacity to tolerate, those uncomfortable feelings that come up with the why, more is provided, and then you can process through those, and then more is provided. So it really is a layered thing. And I remember at one of my big sobriety birthdays, I was like, I am sick of this peeling the onion stuff. I just wanted to be done. I wanted to be, and then I went, wait, and this was really helpful perspective for me, is like, I like the person I am now better than 2 years ago. And in 2 years, I want to be able to say the same thing. And that's been my journey. Yeah. And so I'm always willing to keep going with that and do the work.
Totally.
Sometimes I'd like to take a break, but it's, but that's what the journey is. So being hyper focused on, well, if I just understand the why, then I'll be able to stop all that. There will be some little piece that you'll never have thought of that will be revealed. So And
The
go
last
ahead.
question.
Yes. I love it. Does an addict have to have a circle plan? An active addict doesn't have to do anything for recovery. So how's that?
Circle plan, just so we're clear, you have your center circle behaviors, which are your addiction behaviors, your middle circle behaviors, which are your dangerous behaviors that can lead to your center circle. And then you have your outer circle plan, or your outer circle, which are your healthy behaviors that keep you out of the middle and out of the center. Is that, am I getting that right? What they're talking about here?
Yeah, and that's been used more in, sex addiction.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Like
I
I
was
love
like,
that my colleague Scott has had like uses it across all behaviors, and I think
oh,
that that's
totally. And so
brilliant. It's so helpful.
oh, it's totally helpful. And here's my response. Um, you don't have to have a circle plan if you understand and live the concepts of a circle plan, right? And so I don't, I care more that somebody is living their circle plan than they have it, if that makes sense. So if I'm sitting there talking to somebody and I find out they're already living their circle plan, I'm not going to do that exercise with them because I'm going to move on to other stuff. If they're living it, if they understand it, we're good. And so, but do I think it's a really helpful tool for people early on? Absolutely. It's a brilliant tool. In fact, I think it's helpful for us to understand, oh, wow, this happened the other day. That's a middle circle behavior. And I realized that I became slippery with that middle circle behavior. I'm going to check that in with some buddies and with my recovery group or whatever, and let them know that I just discovered another middle circle behavior that I probably need to work on avoiding, right? And so the idea of a circle plan should be a principle that you have integrated into yourself that you're living all the time.
And another term is a relapse prevention plan. So and I've said this: if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So having the ability to understand these are the I've relapsed. These things are a relapse. These are the slippery things. These are the things where I go, ooh, I need to go call my sponsor. I need to go take a walk. I need to go do something that's in my outer circle, which is all the healthy things. Somebody asked a while back about, do your circle plans change? And I said, yes, I certainly hope so,
Oh,
because I
yeah.
hope that you are finding more stuff that goes in that outer circle that nurtures your soul. Because in addiction, we're so focused on this, but in recovery, I didn't know I like to hike. I didn't know I like to do all these things. I've learned, and those are the things that are, adding meaning and value to all of the people that I've connected with.
Yeah,
All of that's really good. So
absolutely.
so
Well,
hopefully that's helpful. So, thank you, Matt. Great to see you. I'm
oh,
sure I'll pop in and visit with you again before the end of the year. So
so good to see you too. I love the dance we had today. This was a lot of fun. And
always.
thank you everybody for getting on here and participating. This was fantastic.
And I was thinking with the Folsom socks, I was like, isn't that where Folsom Prison isn't
I have no idea.
Didn't Johnny Cash? I'm gonna look that up. I'll email you, but I think
I know it's just outside
didn't
of
Johnny Cash do? I think he did Folsom Prison. Yep, Folsom State Prison
Oh, how funny.
is in Folsom,
It's
California.
is it outside of it's outside of Sacramento, right?
It says in Folsom, California, 20 miles northeast of Sacramento. So when I saw your socks in the bars across the bottom, I was like, maybe those are prison socks.
That's hilarious. That makes me laugh. I love it.
Now you're gonna go listen to the Johnny Cash song. So
I'm gonna go listen right now.
All right, bye everybody. Thank you.
See you guys.